I'm Kayode. Tonight, Southeast leaders denounce secessionist groups and their violent activities in the region and other parts of the country, reaffirm commitment to one Nigeria based on justice and fairness. Participants at a forum in Borno State raised concern over what they describe as worsening humanitarian crisis in the northeast as thousands from the state seek permanent residency in nearby states. The United States Agency for International Development and the Africa Center for Disease Control warned that 15 African countries risk third wave of COVID-19. And Iran's Ibrahim Raisi, considered a hardliner, wins the country's presidential election after securing 62% of the votes cast.
On business news tonight, Nigerian Economic Summit Group warns of looming poverty crisis due to rising unemployment in the country.
And on sports news tonight, FIFA announces Mexico will play its next two official home matches in an empty stadium as part of a punishment following discriminatory chants by the team's fans.
Those who might have been in doubt about the position of Southeast leaders on the secessionist agitations in the region may no longer entertain such concern. This is because the state governors as well as other leaders in the region have condemned the violent activities of the groups in the area and other parts of the country, insisting they do not speak for the region. This declaration followed a closed-door meeting of the leaders at the government house in Enugu, after which the forum's chairman and governor of Ebonyi State, Dave Umahi, told journalists that the leaders have set up a committee to engage the youths and allow the elders address the issues. Others in attendance include the leadership of Ohanaeze Ndigbo, former secretary to the government of the Federation, Mr. Pius Anyim, Minister of Labor and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, National Assembly members, religious and traditional leaders, amongst others.
We, the Igbos, do reaffirm our commitment to one united Nigeria under a platform of justice, equality of rights, fairness, love, and respect for one another. We have noted threats by some groups in some other regions against our people of Southeast, while we firmly promise to protect everyone either from our own region or other regions living in our places. We plead with the leaders of other regions to please note the threats to our people and to please address the threats to our people and to protect them. We condemn the killing of security agencies, the burning of strategic infrastructure, and killing of civilians in Southeast and even in other regions. We request our security agencies to please discharge their duties within the rules of engagement and the law. We condemn in totality the activities of violent secessionist groups in Southeast and elsewhere. We firmly proclaim that we do not support them. They do not speak for Southeast. The impression that Southeast leaders are silent over some of our youth agitation for secession is not correct. Southeast governors, Ohanaeze President, and her leadership, National Assembly members and her leadership from Southeast, notable leaders from Southeast, had come out publicly many times in the past, including ministers from Southeast, to speak against such agitations. In order not to mismanage the unfortunate situation, we found ourselves, Southeast leaders have set up a committee to engage such youths to stop and allow the elders of Southeast to address their fears. The meeting directed our governors and Ohanaeze Ndigbo to liaise with indigenes from northern part of Nigeria and other indigenes of other regions that are living in Southeast to come out openly and to assure their people and of course the nation Nigeria that they are very safe and well protected while living in Southeast. The meeting endorsed our Southeast Joint Security Outfit Ebubago and asked all the personnel of Ebubago to work with security agencies and to respect the rights and privileges of all those living in Southeast and our visitors.
Meanwhile, Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State is worried that the current wave of insecurity and rising agitations among different groups in the country pose a threat to future elections and the continued existence of Nigeria as a country. Governor Fayemi made the remarks at a forum in Ado-Ekiti, the state capital, to examine the lessons derivable from the June 12 struggle. He condemns the manner in which some Nigerians provoke secessionist agitations, saying that the time has come for Nigerians of all classes to challenge the country's leadership to ensure fairness and justice across board and address issues that promote division.
The security threat that confronts us is an existential challenge. It is a direct result of socioeconomic problems that require a national consensus to address. Some of which include a decision not to be part of the escalators of crisis through rhetoric that inadvertently supports instability or justifies insurgency. The current secessionist campaigns and the rise of vocal non-state actors, in my view, are partly a direct response to decades of negative and sentimental indoctrination by leaders who construct marginalization in Nigeria as exclusively ethno-religious in nature without any class character. One of the beautiful precedents and truths about our country that June 12 established is that our diversity does not necessarily mean irreconcilable differences. The way ethno-religious differences did not dictate the voting pattern and electoral outcome of the June 12 election shows that if the elites unite on the way forward for the future of our country, the whole country will follow, and together we can achieve the country of our dreams. Conversely, if the focus is to keep digging out and amplifying what offends one segment against the other, we will continue to compound the current crisis.
Operatives of the Kaduna State Police Command have arrested a suspected bandit in possession of an AK-47 rifle. According to the Kaduna State Police Command spokesman, Mohammed Jalige, the operatives of the command intercepted a vehicle heading towards Kaduna yesterday while on routine patrol along Kudaru Forest in Saminaka Liri local government area of the state. The operatives noticed the suspicious disposition of the occupants of the vehicle and tried to flag them, but they took to their heels. The policemen then engaged them in a shootout, leading to the arrest of one person and the discovery of an AK-47 rifle in the vehicle. The suspect is said to be currently undergoing investigation and given useful information to the police. The humanitarian crisis in Borno State is spreading to nearby states in the northeast region. Well, this came to the fore at a meeting convened by the Northeast Development Commission in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital. Some 400,000 persons affected by conflict, mostly from Borno State, are said to be seeking permanent residency in nearby states.
As the conflict and insurgency in the northeast lingers, the humanitarian situation has worsened, leading to mass displacement as well as loss of lives and livelihood, impacting no fewer than 2 million people. Government intervention is no longer adequate. While the Borno State government has commenced relocation of IDPs to permanent resettlement shelters, insurgents have continued to strike, leading to multiple displacements. Those affected by the repeated dislodgement are now leaving the state in droves, putting pressure on other states in the region. The Northeast Development Commission can no longer stand by, hence the need to rally all the regional stakeholders in this summit. The numbers are staggering.
From the last record, last GTN, we have over 230,000 IDPs in Adamawa State.
Most of the IDPs that are pushed used to go to Bauchi and settle there or to have a place to stay because it's a safer place in this zone. At least we have 64,713 IDPs that are living in Bauchi. We hold the IDPs in our host communities. They are using our hospitals, schools, and whatever we have in the community. If you ask them to come back to Maiduguri or Yobe, they say they will not come back. Please help us more. In Yobe, we have about 47,000 IDPs who are integrated into the host communities. They have been coming to our office seeking for help, looking for accommodation on which our hands are tied. We could not provide for them.
The convener is hoping to get results with wider consultation.
We agreed that we're going to have by monthly meeting to harmonize our approach so that at the end of the day we should know what's going on in the health sector, the food, wash, even the security. Because whatever we discuss in this bilateral meeting, if need be, we now pass it to the security agency and say this is where the challenges are.
As leaders continue to strategize, the IDPs and those currently accommodating them say they expect that answers would come early enough to stem an impending humanitarian crisis.
And as concerns over the security challenges in the country grow, women in Lagos, Ogun, Cross River and Zamfara states have resorted to prayers for an end to the menace. Led by the governor's wives in the states, the women are seeking God's face through interreligious services for peace and security in their respective states and Nigeria. But this initiative is a nationwide call by the Nigerian Governor's Wives Forum for women to intercede for the country.
Wife of the Ogun State Governor, Bamidele Abiodun, leads other women in the state for an interdenominational service to pray for peace and security in the country. They're heeding a call by the Nigerian Governor's Wives Forum to seek divine intervention to the challenges in the country, saying citizens will not wait until things get out of hand before turning to God.
We are gathered here today to pray at a time when our dear country, Nigeria, is suffering multitude of challenges that require divine intervention and divine wisdom to solve.
Here in Lagos, Christians and Muslims also stand side by side to raise their voices in an inter-religious service to seek divine intervention on the security situation. Wife of the governor, Dr. Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu, who was represented by the wife of the deputy governor, Mrs. Oluremi Hamzat, says the prayer session is imperative in view of the challenges confronting the country.
Nigeria is our Jerusalem. It is our prayer that peace shall reign supreme within the walls of this country, and we shall experience God's prosperity.
Meanwhile, in Cross River State, Dr. Linda Yade encourages women to remain steadfast in prayers over prevailing societal challenges, noting that they have a huge role to play in restoring peace and unity to Nigeria.
Following the trend of events, the trend of insecurity in Nigeria, as we are seeing it today, we should come together, go to our different states, organize the women, and bring them out so that we can cry to our Creator, cry to our God, to restore peace to our land and to restore us back to where we used to be.
And in Zamfara State, Mrs. Aisha Matawale lamented the increase in kidnappings and other crimes in the country, particularly in the northwestern states, emphasizing that Nigerians need to work together to address the current situation.
The purpose of the prayers is to raise our one voice and hands together in supplications towards our Creator, the Almighty Allah, and beseech Him for lasting peace and security for our state and nation at large.
For many, these prayers and supplication are welcome, as they believe that the solution to Nigeria's challenges require a multi-pronged approach.
In part two, after the break, The president calls on West African leaders to mount pressure on Mali's military leaders to ensure the democratic transition in the country is not aborted. Stay with us. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television, Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Southeast leaders denounce secessionist groups and their violent activities in the region and other parts of the country, reaffirm commitments to one Nigeria based on justice and fairness. Participants at a forum in Borno State raised concern over what they describe as worsening humanitarian crisis in the northeast as thousands from the state seek permanent residency in nearby states. The United States Agency for International Development and the Africa Center for Disease Control warned that 15 African countries risk third wave of COVID-19. And Iran's Ibrahim Raisi, considered a hardliner, wins the country's presidential election after securing 62% of the votes cast. Well, the president is calling on West African leaders to mount pressure on the military leadership in Mali to ensure that the process of democratic transition in the country is not compromised. President Muhammadu Buhari stated his position today in a speech he delivered at the 59th Ordinary Session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS in Accra, Ghana. Mali was recently suspended from the regional bloc over the military coup that ousted the country's civilian government. In the words of the president, while democracy continues to develop in our sub-region, recent events in Mali are sad reminders that vigilance remains a crucial imperative to protect people's aspirations to freely choose the form of government they want. Pressures are needed to ensure that the transition process in Mali, which is halfway to its conclusion, is not aborted. The president also faulted the recent United Nations resolution to expel all foreign fighters in Libya without first ensuring that they are disarmed and also engaging regional stakeholders in the process. He asked ECOWAS leaders to decide how the UN sub-regional organizations' partnerships should be reviewed to address the dangers that this resolution poses to the region. The president declared support for the ongoing institutional reforms in ECOWAS, saying that he looked forward to an ECOWAS that is fit for purpose. Meanwhile, the president has congratulated the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, as well as the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, on their reappointment for a second term in office. The congratulatory messages were conveyed to both UN top officials in a statement by the President's Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu. According to the President, the reappointment of the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General, a former Minister of Environment in Nigeria, will afford them the opportunity to serve humanity with their experience. He notes that their passion to promote peace, alleviate poverty, improve health, and empower more people will gain more speed. President Buhari expressed confidence that Mrs. Mohammed's extended stay in office will embolden more women and girls, especially in Africa and Nigeria, to aspire to new heights of leadership, dream beyond the borders of their country. The United States Agency for International Development and the Africa Center for Disease Control warned African countries to combat the growing COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy. Speaking at a virtual joint news conference, representatives of both agencies stated that over 15 African countries are at the risk of a third wave of the virus.
Announced as a contribution to
this joint webinar by the Africa Center for Disease Control and the United States Agency for International Development is one of the platforms where challenges relating to access to COVID-19 vaccines and the vaccination exercise in the continent is appraised. The Director General of the Africa Center for Disease Control notes with concern the recent surge in the number of cases in the continent, as he warns about a third wave in 15 African countries.
We might actually be sitting on a volcano here to erupt if we do not do the right things and do them quickly. several countries as we speak. About 15 of them are racing towards the third wave, and a couple of them actually are moving into the fourth wave.
COVID-19 vaccination in Africa is very low, as the continent has only administered 32 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines, which accounts for less than 1% of the 2.1 billion doses already administered globally. The lack of access to vaccines is one challenge that the U.S. government says must be addressed urgently.
We'll work with COVAX in distributing these vaccines, and we will obviously consult with partners in Africa and with Dr. Nkekson and his team on our vaccine work on the continent. We are also actively consulting with the Africa CDC and the AU on the distribution of 80 million vaccine doses that we previously announced.
Making vaccines available for poorer countries is one thing, but accepting these life-saving preparations is another ball game. The WHO at a news conference in Abuja calls for the need to address COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy.
Attitudes toward vaccination are affected by popular misunderstandings of the virus, and suspicion of COVID-19 more broadly affect perception of vaccines. Vaccine confidence must be addressed.
Only about 12 million people in Africa have been fully inoculated against COVID-19, as the number of cases on the continent surpasses 5 million.
And now to politics. In Kwara State, the calculations on which party will emerge as a winner in the next political dispensation has commenced, with defections from one party to another. While the ruling party, the All Progressives Congress, played host to defectors from the Peoples Democratic Party, some members of the ruling party have also dumped the APC to form what they call a third force, but they're yet to decide which party to join. It all started with the former presidential candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, Ganiyu Galadima, and some former council chairmen defecting to the APC, citing the need to collaborate with the ruling party to develop the state.
The party for which we decamped to the APC was not just the camping, even though we were not members of APC. But in 2015, the ACPN was one of the legacy parties that worked assiduously to enthrone the governor. And we are happy today to celebrate His Excellency that all the effort then were not in vain. We are getting follow for all the efforts. Our second reason for joining the APC was the response of the governor to the issue of development of infrastructure in road, in education, in health, and human empowerment.
Meanwhile, in another location in Ilorin, some members of the APC announced their withdrawal from the party, alleging crisis in the ruling political party in the state. The group says it will search for the ideal party to join.
The intra-party crisis has been on for long and unabated. The struggle for the soul of the party, which cannot be divorced from the 2023 political ambitions, has been the root cause of the lingering internal struggles. From the highlighted points above, we, the over 20,000 card-carrying members of All Progressive Congress, which include the senatorial chairman, Kwara Central, local government party chairman, local government women leader, youth leaders, ward chairmen, as well as APT party sorors across the 16 local government areas in the state, hereby denounce APC and form a third force for the hearing and betterment of Kwara at large.
The Lagos State's Judicial Panel on Restitution for Victims of SARS and Other Related Matters has admitted more documents from a consultant pathologist to the Lagos State government, Professor John Obafunwa. At the last sitting of the panel on June the 5th, the chairman, Justice Doris Okowobi, had ordered Professor Obafunwa to bring before the panel the post-mortem reports conducted on 96 bodies said to have been picked from different parts of Lagos between October the 20th and 27th, 2020. The chairman made the order after the pathologist testified that the coroner's office with which he worked conducted post-mortem on 99 bodies during the period. He had also testified that of the 99, only 3 bodies were labeled as NSARS, Lekki. The identities of all 3 male bodies still remain unknown. At the proceedings today, the pathologist admitted that he had misconstrued the panel's request and did not bring the post-mortem reports. He promised to bring them at the next proceedings. The panel, however, admitted other relevant documents brought by the pathologist, including the report of where all 96 bodies were pricked from in different areas of Lagos.
Here I have the notes that came with each body, and I believe I have 96 there. I insisted on, of course I had to do everything through the acting chief coroner because I don't have any powers to instruct anybody. And I have to ask that I want the pages to be photocopied and brought to us. I got this. That's okay. The register. Yeah. I cannot pick the register in their facility and bring them, and I wanted the photocopy. A list that came from Ikorodu General Hospital through the office of the CMD, of the MD, stating all the bodies they brought down to us, the 6 cases. I have the list of the 5 cases that came from General Hospital Lagos, the mortuary in General Hospital Lagos, the 5 cases. And I have the 2 cases from Isolo mortuary. Putting all these things together, which had actually been done, in the course of trying to analyze what we have. I have the list here. Summary that tells us the NSAS number, whether the person was declared known or unknown, the name of the mortuary in which the bodies were located, the alleged place of recovery. Again, please remember, it was 8 days after the incident that I was drafted into it, and I could only ask for relevant documents. But the alleged place of recovery, I have them. The date they were deposited, the time they were deposited, and by whom. Of course, we received bodies from the 21st, and the last one came in on the 29th. And like I said, they were from all over.
So that's the summary of all the other documents?
Yes, sir.
When the news at 10 returns, the Nigeria Economic Summit Group warns of deepening poverty crisis due to rising unemployment in the country. That's some business news. Join us again. As part of efforts to address incessant air mishaps recorded by the military, the Nigerian Air Force has commenced the retraining of its crew members to ensure safety of personnel. According to the Director of Training at the Nigerian Air Force, Air Commodore Etienne Fanga, the exercise follows a directive by the Chief of Air Staff that the training be held on a regular basis to keep with global best practice. The military recently lost some of its members to crashes, with the latest occurring in May, killing 11 officers, including the then Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Atahiru.
We have discovered that in the world, most of accidents and incidents have been attributed to human factors, which the human being is the most critical aspect of the aviation sector. We've also discovered that it is not, most of the accidents do not have to do with the technical abilities of the crew, but rather the interface between the human and human, and the human and the aircraft. And so because at this point we are involved in several operations all over the country, you know, this does not come without risks that we have seen in the Air Force of recent involving incidents and accidents. So the Chief of the Air Staff has approved this training, which is a first in a series of training that will be carried out in all operational units at various centers all over the country. We have invited very seasoned and experienced resource persons from Men's Institute in Kaduna. They have this certification for this training. It is the Chief of Air Staff's intention to establish a culture of safety in the Nigerian Air Force, so that while we have increased and enhanced our operations, we take care of this critical aspect of NAV operations.
Now, to protecting the environment, the federal government is lamenting the impact of desert encroachment on the nation's agriculture development. Well, the Ministry of Environment estimates that 35% of the country's entire land area is now threatened by desertification and drought. Well, as Nigeria joins the rest of the world to mark the 2021 World Desertification and Drought Day, this special report looks at the impact of desert encroachment on the country.
This land has not always been like this. A combination of drought and deforestation has rendered it unsuitable for farming. According to statistics from the Ministry of Environment, a total landmass of about 323,000 kilometers square is threatened by desertification. The affected areas cut across 15 frontline states, which produces over 95% of Nigeria's livestock population. The ministry also states that the livelihood of about 40 million people who live in the affected areas is threatened. The effect has led to depletion of resources, increasing the threats to food and water security, livelihood and sustainability of life, biodiversity loss, forced migration, hunger and poverty, disease and nutrition, as well as struggle for resources. Apparently, this has led to communal clashes and farmer-herder conflict.
Desertification is gradually pushing its limits southwards, and this is leading to loss of soil, loss of arable soil, loss of biodiversity. It is bringing about social conflicts, as is massively weakness in the country today due to competition for resource use. It has led to the reduced investment opportunities, and when this happens, the nation's GDP is adversely affected.
To counter this threat, the Minister of Environment is leading the efforts to plant trees. The federal government is also partnering with subnationals to plant 25 million trees across the country this year.
Here in the FCT, we've also keyed into the federal government's efforts in the fight against desertification and drought, as we have begun the process of planting about 170,000 trees across the Federal Capital Territory, with the collaboration of several non-governmental organizations and members of the public. I must not fail to mention that 70,000 of these tree seedlings were received from the Federal Ministry of Environment last year.
According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, Nigeria had the highest rate of deforestation globally in 2005. Between 2000 and 2005, the country had lost 55.7% of its primary forests. This has become counterproductive for rural dwellers who depend on the trees for economic survival and threatens tree planting efforts. The Minister of Environment wants Nigerians to own the effort to stop desert encroachment.
You make sure you are not cutting trees illegally, but take it upon yourself that you are equally responsible, just like any other Nigeria, to protect the environment. Plant trees wherever you can. Be an environmental ranger yourself. Volunteer and protect the environment. Report where you see people are injuring the environment. Or let me use even a harsher word: committing environmental terrorism. Because where you go about cutting trees illegally, degrading land, burning material just like that, and all kinds of things, is environmental terrorism. And you are committing it on people, on plants, on animals. So stop doing that.
The minister also believes that the current initiative to grow 25 million trees in 2021 has the potential of revamping forest areas. Nevertheless, the government may also consider the rigid implementation of laws that prevent unauthorized felling of trees to ensure the project reaches its goal.
Speaking of that vital resource of water, the Edo State government has reiterated its commitment to supplying clean and affordable water to residents through what it calls a water market and an overhaul of the water supply schemes in the state. Governor Godwin Obaseki announced this after inspecting a water supply project in the Central Senatorial District of the state. According to him, the water supply program will be divided into large town supply schemes for the big cities and the small town schemes for the smaller communities to ensure effective service delivery.
We will need the communities to form water associations and get their members who are the people who are going to use this water anyway. Because before you begin to make the investments in the boreholes, in the overhead tanks, in sending out the water, you need to know that there's demand and estimate the demand. And so for us to estimate the demand, these people must form water associations in the community. They know themselves. And what we will do in that case is to make the investments in the boreholes, in the overhead tanks, and then give the association the water so that they can sell to their members, collect whatever, they have agreed, so that they can continue to maintain and sustain the facilities we have put. That's the basis for, providing these associations in the rural areas. We are putting in place a system where we can now recover the costs in these investments. Like you can see, it's very expensive. Look at the network of pipes and pumps that we've had to put in place to take the water almost 20 kilometers from the river down here. And then you can imagine the extent of distribution of pipes into homes, into communities. Right now, people pay for water. And our goal is to ensure that we get them cleaner, safer water, more convenient, at a cheaper rate at which they are buying water now from, private providers.
In 2019, we brought you the story of trade by barter, an ancient means of exchange in Makuomi, a waterside community in Ogun State. Now, while that practice might seem strange to a lot of people in modern times, the Ogun State government says it will be delighted to have partners in promoting this culture to boost the tourism potential of the state. Our correspondent Chris Elems returned to Makuomi and brings this report.
Makuomi is approximately 177 kilometers from Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital. An agrarian and fishing community, Makuomi is the last of the Ijebu town, bordered by Lagos.
It's been 2 years since we last visited this Ogun waterside community where an ancient form of business transaction still exists, trade by barter. What has happened 2 years after? Has there been
any change. The way of life of the people remains intact. Not much has changed about Makurmi, except that they are now connected to the national grid, thanks to their individual efforts. An aspect of the road tarred and a growing menace presented by water hyacinth. They also have a new palace and a king, unlike when we last visited. This is a big plus to the development of the community, says Chief Tayo Ajayi, who also decried the absence of state government in the area.
The least thing that government can provide is to talk about water. It's not available here. No road construction, nothing. The only one we have now is being done by the federal member of the House of Representatives.
The center of our attention is the Ajebo market, which hosts traders and buyers who come from far and wide to transact businesses in cash or by barter. There has not been any change effected yet. Some of the features are already wearing off, including the roof. Though this is no distraction to the traders.
When I become the Oba, I realized that my people were really happy with the trade by barter and they are making it. And my vision is that by God's grace, before next year, the trade by barter will be bigger than what we are seeing now.
The last time I was here, it was Eja Ogede. I was able to exchange my plantain with fish. Today, I will be pushing my luck a little further. It could be Eja Range Rover.
We never do that one, unless federal government help us for that.
Despite the challenges faced by the community, culture has continued to play a significant role in strengthening their bond of unity. And the Okoshio boat regatta is one of such practices. In addition to the contribution communally made to grow Makurmi, the people have hatched a 5-year developmental plan to make the community the cynosure of all eyes.
We're not waiting for government. We've mapped out plans towards, attracting more attention and then providing infrastructure for the market and for the entire community.
Though the state government has visited to verify claims of the practice of trade by barter within its borders, the Commissioner for Tourism says the state is open to collaboration from individuals or organizations interested in promoting the people of Makurmi and their cultural practice.
We are stretching forth our hand of partnership as a government, that if you have interest in trying to partner with us, then come around. Bring your proposal. Let's enter into an MOU, an agreement, so that together we can also make it, a befitting place for every one of us as a community.
Makurmi will continue to attract attention as long as this trade by barter lasts in the community. It will, however, leave a negative impression on visitors if the dearth of infrastructure remains and the Ajebo market left in this state of disrepair. Chris Elams, Channels Television News.
Well, for more trade and business stories, here's Teniola Shobo Ali.
Certainly, Kayode. Well, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group has warned that many more Nigerians may soon fall into poverty due to rising unemployment in the country. According to its economic report for the first quarter of this year, the country's economic think tank highlights that the economic growth within the period was relatively weak despite exiting recession in the last quarter of 2020. Meanwhile, the NESG recommends collaborative efforts between the government and relevant stakeholders to tackle the constraints to value chain development in critical sectors of Nigeria's economy to reverse the trend. The United Arab Emirates has finally lifted the ban on travels between Dubai and Nigeria following a prolonged disagreement over COVID-19 protocols. In a message announcing the resumption of flights between the two countries, the Dubai Media Office mentioned that passengers from Nigeria are now expected to have received a negative result for a PCR test taken within 48 hours before departure. It adds that passengers are also expected to present a negative PCR test certificate with a code from laboratories, which is approved by the Nigerian government, while also undergoing the same test upon arrival at the Dubai airport. The country also announced that it will resume carrying passengers from South Africa and India from the 23rd of June in accordance with COVID-19 protocols. The Naira fell by 0.02% to 410 Naira 33 kobo against the dollar at the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange fixing window as at June the 18th, down from 410 Naira 25 kobo, which it closed last week. According to latest week-to-date FX market report data released by the FMDQ exchange, the local currency, on the other hand, rose by 0.51% against the US dollar at the parallel market to 496 Naira 25 kobo. Total value of transaction carried out last week at the I&E window dropped again, this time by 9.03% to $489.19 million, and that's in contrast to $537.74 million traded in the previous week. Meanwhile, total turnover of forex transactions carried out at the FX spot, forwards and futures markets dropped by 15.22% week on week to $583.88 million. Well, despite a mostly positive sectoral performance, the local equities market ended the third week of June in the red, with about 266 billion naira lost to profit-taking by some investors. The benchmark or share index closed the week lower by 1.30, and this is largely credited to the 10% drop on Airtel Africa's share price after investors resumed from the Democracy Day holiday to take profit on the telecom giant, as well as some other high-value equities. Similarly, the volume of shares traded within the 4 sessions was lower by 9.4% in contrast to the previous week, as 981.14 million shares changed hands for 10.38 billion naira in over 15,000 transactions. 4 out of the 5 key sectors of listed equities recorded gains, especially the banking as well as the oil and gas counter, which rose by more than 1%, while the industrial goods sector was the only losers on that chart. The share price of Beggar Paint is best among 37 other gainers, as it recorded 14.93% increase. UACN is worst among 25 losers. Its share price fell by 11.01%, while the trio of Zenith, Sterling and Wema Bank were the top 3 most traded stocks for the week. And that's Business News Tonight. I'm Tenyola Shiboale. It's back to Kayode for the rest of the news at 10.
Well, thank you, Tenny. Let's now join Kayode Alayode for the latest sports reports.
Welcome to Sports News. In the European Championships, Antoine Griezmann has salvaged a 1-0 draw for France against Hungary in Budapest as the world champions missed the chance to clinch a place in the last 16. Germany defeated Portugal 4-2 to revive their hopes of reaching the last 16 and leave the reigning champions in danger of crashing out. Robert Lewandowski scored his first goal of the tournament as Poland held Spain to keep alive their hopes of reaching the knockout stage. FIFA has announced that Mexico will play its next 2 official home matches in an empty stadium as part of its punishment for discriminatory chants by the team's fans at 2 Olympic football tournament qualifiers in March. An investigation was opened by the FIFA Disciplinary Committee into two separate incidents that occurred at matches against the Dominican Republic on March the 18th and the United States on March the 24th in Guadalajara. FIFA also fined the Mexican Football Federation $65,000 for the behavior of their fans during the two matches. FIFA has also opened an investigation into another incident that occurred at Mexico's friendly match against Iceland on May the 29th in Texas. Meanwhile, Benin Republic have terminated the appointment of their French coach, Michel Doucier, following the country's failure to qualify for next year's African Cup of Nations. Having reached the quarterfinal of the 2019 African Cup of Nations in Egypt, the Squirrels failed to get the needed draw against the Leone Stars of Sierra Leone. Michel has been working with different African countries since 2002, having enjoyed 3 spells in charge of a Guinean national team, 1 time in charge of Cote d'Ivoire, and 2 at the helm of Benin Republic national team. The Beninois Football Federation says a new coach will be appointed as the team continues preparation against the 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifier later in the year. And that will be all on sports news. It's back to you, Kayode.
Thanks a lot, Kayode. Ibrahim Raisi has been elected Iran's 8th president after securing 62% of the votes in the presidential election, which saw the lowest voter turnout since the 1979 revolution. Mr. Raisi is Iran's top judge and holds ultra-conservative views. He's under U.S. sanctions and has been linked to past executions of political prisoners.
Waving flags and holding posters bearing his face, supporters of Iran's president-elect, Ibrahim Raisi, gather in Tehran's Imam Hussein Square to celebrate his victory in Friday's presidential election. With all 28.9 million ballots counted, Raisi was elected with a tally of 17.9 million votes. Outgoing President Hassan Rouhani has paid a congratulatory visit to Raisi, who was widely tipped to win, having been endorsed by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. However, voter turnout was low at just 48%. There were also 3.7 million invalid ballots, likely to have been mostly blank or protest votes. Almost 600 hopefuls, including 40 women, registered to be candidates in the election. But in the end, only 7 men were approved last month, and 3 of those candidates subsequently pulled out before polling day. Raisi is the first Iranian president to be sanctioned by the United States, even before assuming office, as he was designated in 2019. The U.S. blacklisted him for his role in the mass execution of political prisoners in 1988 and in the violent suppression of unrest in 2009. Iran has never acknowledged the mass executions, and Raisi has never addressed allegations about his role. The 60-year-old will be inaugurated in early August and will have significant influence over domestic policy and foreign affairs. But in Iran's political system, it's the country's supreme leader, the top religious cleric, who has the final say on all state matters.
And the main news again. Southeast leaders comprising the governors and other prominent personalities in the region today denounced the secessionist groups and their violent activities in the zone, as well as in other parts of the country, and reaffirmed their commitment to one Nigeria based on justice and fairness. And that's the news at 10. On behalf of the team, thank you and good night.